the March 25th, 2025 Village Council work session. We will now go to the first item on it, a report from the Beautification Committee. Here comes the Beautification Committee chair. Go right ahead.
Hello. Nice to see you all. So I was asked to give a brief report on beautification, and for everyone who's still here who does not know, beautification serves as an advisory committee, and we enhance the appearance of Pinehurst and the surrounding area. I would like to start with a note of appreciation for Kevin Brewer and Carlton and Shannon and Mike, who join us at every meeting, and I honestly don't think that we would get half of what we get done without them. I'm so appreciative for all of them and their hard work. For those of you who do not know, Beautification Committee comprises 15 community and ETJ members, and we have seats slated for the resort, Pinehurst Business Partners, and the Pinehurst Garden Club. And most people know beautification as the gardeners, but we do a lot more than that, luckily, because I can't even keep fake plants alive. And yet here I am as chair. Every year we offer grants to local residents and businesses to beautify public spaces. And we are involved in the Christmas decorating, hanging wreaths. We host a Christmas decorating contest every year. We issue the annual Manning Award for properties that uphold Manning's landscape design. And we assist in hanging and the baskets and doing the downtown planting for Planting Day. Okay, so some accomplishments in the past year. Molly, actually, who is here, saw a need to refresh some of the paint on some of the lampposts on NC5, and we all agreed to help fund that with NCDOT, and that got done real fast. We are currently collaborating on a project with Pinehurst Elementary to beautify the space in front of the school, the little circle. So we will be working on that this season into this coming year. We have recently commissioned a plaque honoring Warren Manning that will go in Tufts Park. We also, I also commissioned the railroad pine cones that you see on the trestle, and we're in the process of taking those down and replacing them with bigger ones that will make a bigger impact as a welcome statement to visitors. And then we are also currently working on a planting pamphlet, which we're revising for this year to include in realtor packets so that people understand native planting, deer-resistant planting, and some of the non-invasive species that we'd love to see around the village. In mid-April, we will participate in an NCDOT litter sweep that the community is also welcome to participate in. And I am happy to announce that applications to the Beautification Committee are so high that we actually had to turn the faucet off for a while because we are at capacity. So there's a lot of interest in keeping Pinehurst beautiful. Any questions?
Questions from anybody?
Statement, just thank you so much. And you guys are clearly successful because Pinehurst is beautiful.
Mm-hmm. It is indeed.
Yes, same. Well said. Dr. Morgan? Anything else, Jack? No?
No, I can attest to the fact that everything she said is absolutely true, and that is a very hardworking committee. Thank you.
Well, please keep it up. Let us know if there's more we should be doing or saying, and we really appreciate you and the committee's work. And it's one of those visual things. People can see it. You don't have to brief them. You just drive around and they can see it. So thank you very much. Okay. All righty. Item B, which is the capital planning process discussion. I'm going to ask John Taylor, who has spearheaded a lot of this discussion in the past, to pick up the baton again.
Yeah, I was struck, I think it was in Doug's review of the strategic operating plan, how many of the projects we have had that seem to have been on the docket for a very long time. And I married that with an email that I received from a former council member. I don't remember whether this person sent it to all of us or not, but the tagline was, "Do something with my money." So we're fortunate through the prudent financial management of past councils, as well as what we've done in the year and change that I've been on, that we have a surplus of funds. It's not as big as the long-term capital needs entirely. Our your reach should always exceed your grasp, and ours does. But I think we can do a better job and help staff in this regard by figuring out what it takes to actually approve something or not, and not let it linger. So I wrote the very brief PowerPoint, and we're not going to talk about all of them because I think the point is made. I think we can do a better job of establishing the process and then developing the criteria that we need for a decision. And that's a joint effort from all five of us. I would emphasize in that point that this does not change how projects are originated. We can originate them ourselves, or they can come to us from staff who says, hey, I think we need X or Y or Z. So how you get something on the list doesn't change, but what we do once we have something on the list can, to avoid kicking the can down the road and to be sure that staff's efforts are focused on what we need to make those decisions, given that any assignment we give them in some sense is in addition to their day jobs, whether in the planning department or wherever they might be. So the goal is to try to make all of that more efficient. We're not going to talk about the library and archives tonight. We're already down the road on that. We've made an initial decision, not on the archives yet, but we will get to that. And we're not going to talk about the third station. We have a Birdie process, which is nearing completion, and when that process comes back before us, then that will drive what we decide. But that is, in essence, the sort of process that I think we should follow to actually make a decision or not. And we're also, I'm sorry, Doug.
Yeah, I don't want to interrupt too much, but I just want to insert that you're taking blame for the council for maybe these decisions not being made. I think it's a two-way road. Like, I think there are some things that staff could have been doing to help, initiate studies or make recommendations to help. But anyway, I appreciate that. So.
We're not allocating blame here. We're just trying to improve the process. And I also don't consider in this, say, sidewalks and walkways, they are technically capital, but we tend to approve them every year as part of the budget. And that's not right. I'm talking about the sort of one-time decisions. Buying another ladder truck, yes or no? Buying another pumper truck was a replacement to something that may be wearing out. Yes, I mean that. As we look at the magnitude of that decision compared to the total, it is relatively small. And I think Jack circulated an article about what the lead times can be if you're going to go out and buy something new. So we ought to decide what it is we'd like to know about that. What is the need? How old is the equipment we have? Gather whatever the resources are, and then make a decision. Because if we're going to do it, we're probably better off doing it sooner rather than later. It's not likely to become less expensive in the future, and things do wear out, and we need to be prudent stewards of our capital stock. So I thought I would pick, and I spent some time, I see Angie is still here, wasn't it? The Camelot Playground. It's a pretty small item one way or another. We ought to be able to define, with input from staff, what are the important criteria to say, yes, we're going to do it, or no, we're not. And if we're not going to do it, let's not let it linger here year after year after year just because it's small. Let's take it off until somebody wants to put it back on. So I selected two that we could take a look at. One is the relocating the public services complex. Pat actually introduced the idea of moving it to West Pinehurst Park. Why? We control the land already. We don't need to find somebody else to swap land with us. And my sense is, and it's just my sense, in the current environment, anyone who has has 6 or 7 acres that we would need, the price that they may be able to get from someone else, the market price, may be a price that we cannot pay because of the limitations we have in terms of what we can spend relative to tax value or assessed tax value. So I just listed in this the 5 things that I came up with that I would want to know. And my challenge to my fellow council members is to come up with your own list. I doubt that I've thought of everything. That would be very surprising to me. What are the things that we would need to know? And then I did do the model. The model may have some wrong numbers in it. If I turn this over to Dana, she can either improve the model or collect accurate numbers. But on a simple cash basis to relocate, to spend $6 million to relocate, if that's the right number, it might not be, because of the ability to then put the existing land into play, possibly find someone who has an idea for how they'd like to develop it, the actual cost to the village is substantially less than the construction cost. So I use that just as one example. The second example is one that we have not had on the list. There was a proposal, as we know, to build a structure between the Holly Inn and the Pinecrest for a variety of reasons that did not go forward. And I was thinking, I can't think of another place immediately adjacent to the downtown area where we're going to construct a building. And the thought occurred to me, and this is a little bit out of the casebook of Sherlock Holmes, you know, when all the impossible things have been eliminated, whatever remains must be the answer. So I would categorize this by saying down is the new up. If we can't build a structure, which I can think of a lot of reasons why we might not want to go up above ground, I thought about why couldn't we excavate under the existing sand lot? And rather than just use me, because I know nothing about building a parking structure, or very little anyway, I actually spoke to someone who is with a local engineering firm. They do a lot of work in water infrastructure and what have you. And I said, there has to be a way to just give us a ballpark estimate of what this would cost. That's his number, the $40,000 to $50,000 per space. That is not my number. So I'm taking it because I have reason to believe that this person will give us a reasonable number. He actually talked about going all the way underneath Tufts Park and adding, A, I'm not sure we need 100 or 150 spaces. B, that would only complicate the discussion with the Park Service, even if we assured them that we're going to put back on top exactly what they see today, with the exception of some way you got to get down there. So A, again, my initial thoughts were assess benefits to village businesses. We're going to have a discussion with the National Park Service. I would hope that to the extent that it would be minimally invasive, that might go well, but we don't know. Obviously, we need to confirm the cost, and we have to figure out what we would do if we tore up the existing sand lot. Where would we have people park during the construction period, whatever that was? So, end of presentation. My challenge would be, if you think this is a reasonable process, to decide which of the plans that we have on the existing list we would want to apply this to, and then begin to submit to Doug whatever our list of criteria are. Get staff obviously thinking, the appropriate staff thinking about what their concerns are, what their issues are, so that we end up not taking what I think was, where did I have it here? The major capital needs, which in the last presentation Doug did, totaled $28 million. Now that included some of the things that I'm ruling out, but it's $8 million for the library and archives renovation. It's $10 million for Fire Station 93. Not all of that is capital. I think as we all found out, the majority of that is the additional staffing that might be required if we were to position something out there. We'll let the Birdie process play out. We'll come back and revisit that one as time.
Bless you.
That is the extent of what I wanted to present today, with a formal recommendation that if council thinks we're onto something, let's refine the process further, decide which one or two or three potential projects we want to apply it to, and then try to go down that road.
Do you have a criteria as to what is the level of capital requirement that triggers a different process?
No, I think that to the extent that either staff or we decide that there is a capital need that we want, I think this is as applicable to Camelot Park or replacing the pumper truck at $500,000 or $800,000 as it is to relocating the public services complex, which will be substantially more expensive.
Yeah.
As a process, I think it helps us make decisions. The less money is involved, the easier the decision may be.
Yeah, and we have a Birdie process, and I think what you're talking about is very similar or kind of the same concept. I do like what you're saying is that, like, staff should know what council is looking for when we're developing this, the report and the plan. And so when we give you something, it's what you actually wanted and what you were expecting, and enough to help you make a decision in that area.
And staff, to the extent that they may be much more expert than any of us, they may come up with other criteria that we didn't consider and say, look, you ought to think about this.
Yeah, and I mean, just for example, I would add like opportunity cost to almost every project that we look at. So we're going to spend a lot of money on a downtown parking structure or moving public services. Like, what else could we have done with that money? What potentially might have been more important? And like for example, West Pinehurst Park, you know, if you take part of it and use it as a public services, that obviously makes it unavailable for park opportunities. And then you already mentioned the operations aspects of it. So West Pinehurst Park is pretty far away from the rest of the village. So having our solid waste drivers drive back and forth is something that we need to consider, and as we analyze whether that's a good location or not. But that can all be part of this process.
And they do maintenance on existing facility. That would be
Yep.
locating something in what I would call an extreme corner of our geography is maybe not the right thing to do. I don't know.
It's perfect right where it is, John. It's centrally located. We already own the
For that
land.
purpose it is, yes.
Yes, we own the land, it's centrally located. It's convenient to the village hall.
But the other thought that
Who came up with this idea? Go ahead.
The other thought that I had, which I did not put on, is not only incorporate staff time required for evaluation, whether it's, we call it a Birdie process or something else, but also the implementation. Great, we're going to do X. What are the implications for that on staff? That may have as much to do with timing, what fiscal year we budgeted in, as the actual allocation of capital. Because it's a finite resource, and we have to be sure that we work cooperatively down that road.
Yeah.
First of all, let me thank you for taking this on, going through this. We all got the benefit now of how Goldman Sachs would treat a client, and they sent us their best. But
Excuse me, but on Tuesday, it will be 22 years since I retired.
you never really retire from that stuff. So, but at any rate, I think I'm not sure if I'm being totally accurate, but I think that list of capital projects is somewhat exhaustive. In other words, I don't think there's another capital project hidden in the couch cushions. If there is, I think it'd be helpful to surface it so that when we look at things, we can look at everything and we don't have that last minute, oh, what about this? I do think that the way you've broken this down is a good process. Putting some numbers to it is a good process. One of the things we have to be extra careful about, because it caught us in the past, is how we estimate the longer-term projects as to what will be their actual cost. We're really, we get bids, and we're going to put in a four-way traffic stop downtown. We're pretty good at how much that's going to cost us within a narrow range. But when we talk about bigger projects stretching out over years, there's a lot of variables that play. But I'm a supporter of trying to do as much as thorough analysis as we can as we choose the difference between what I like to consider as wants versus needs. And we really need to assess that because we have a village. We got to keep in mind the sources of almost all our revenue are the residents who live here. We have a well-off population, but, some people are on fixed incomes, and some people are better fixed than others. So when they're getting increases in their insurance costs, they're getting increases in their utility bills, and they're getting increases in all these folks on fixed incomes, that has more of an impact on them than those that may not be as sort of tied to a
I think
fixed
all of
income.
this is subsumed in what I would call general financial management.
Okay.
We're not looking to increase taxes so that we can finance $20 million more stuff.
I agree. I agree.
When Dana made her presentation on a debt policy, I'm quite certain that Pinehurst general obligation bonds would sell well.
Right.
But I'm not looking to create the level of expenditure that would justify.
If we
That's not what we're about here.
if we go down the general obligation bonds route, we've made a wrong turn somewhere. So at any rate, I guess the next steps are to be sure we have an exhaustive list. Let's sort of apply these general principles. And as we get, and it is very similar to the birdie thing, we really haven't had a lot of birdies, to be honest with you, that I recall. As a matter of fact, we kept pressing about the recent birdie, and because we hadn't seen a birdie when we were making decisions about or recommendations on a possibility of a third fire station. We had a birdie 5 years earlier, but there was nothing in the interim until just this last year where it really got jump-started, and now we're starting to get results.
Yeah, as we go through the SOP, so the 5-year budget, anything in the next few years that, we need to be planning for, we'll need some sort of birdie process. And
Yes.
I think
So-
we can build that.
And not everything will, deciding to renovate, I will use the word, the Camelot Playground, there's no financial modeling to do there. We're not going to start charging admission. There's not going to be a rate of return discussion there.
Yeah, that's, it's a good point.
I don't think.
I'll make one final comment, and that is that what I observed as a new councilman several years ago now, 3 or 4 years ago, is that there was a reluctance on, I'll just use the word council in general, to literally say no to something. Almost every topic, even if the staff recommendation was not to proceed on something, there was always seemed to be one council member who said, well, let's not totally dismiss it. Why don't we just leave it in the background and hold on to it, put it in the, park it somewhere and do something with it. So nothing ever disappeared. Now, that parking garage from downtown, that's the first thing I know that disappeared, but I think that predates us, predates my arrival. It was sort of in the grave.
That's the one I'm trying to make disappear.
Yeah, okay. So, but that's my recollection of when discussions would get going, really one council member could get everyone else to say, okay, we'll put it out a few years, just to end the discussion about whether or not we should say no. And that's our responsibility to say no as much as it is to say yes. All right, any other comments, thoughts? Thank you again, John.
Do we have a decision that we're going to select a couple of these and attempt to employ the process? In other words, to solicit input from the 5 of us?
Why don't we do this? Doug, why don't you and staff
Yeah, can I make a
chew over that?
recommendation? Yeah. Ones that, a few years out that would benefit us to take a deeper dive on whether or not this is an appropriate project to invest money in.
Happy to defer prioritization to you for the moment, yes.
And we're coming on closer to the budget cycle startup, so this may all dovetail well with that.
Yeah, agreed.
Okay. All right, so we've got an action for that. Thank you again, John. Discuss improving resident street lighting satisfaction, because the data says they're not so satisfied. Is that right?
Yeah, so a few things. In the packet, I included some information from our resident survey about
Oh, yeah.
how how happy people are with their satisfaction with our lights, our street lighting. It is actually the second most requested capital improvement
Yes.
within the village. So-
Which is something, another thing to factor in, John, in these capital decisions. Our residents' opinions, because we have them for 5 years, on various topics. We got them broken down by neighborhood. So one other thing for staff to factor in there. If I recall, Doug, your this is the same one you gave at NAC?
Yeah, and really this is just, we presented to NAC, it should also be presented to council. So most of you were there, so you know what's going on. But this is something we're looking at. We have laid out potential 40 new streetlights in the village, and we've scattered them about where we think is appropriate. And then we asked the NAC, hey, ask your neighborhood if they think where we're proposing them is good, or give us feedback. You can add more, take out. So that's the process we're going down. I think after we get feedback from NAC at the locations that we're pretty certain that we want to go in, we can reach out to the immediate abutter and just make sure that we're not going to surprise them when the lights start shining down in their yard. So with that, council doesn't have any objections. We're going to move quickly, and we're going to, as soon as we get feedback from NAC, we'll work with Duke to confirm the locations, and we'll bring it before you before the decision's final. But
Okay, I'm fine with that. Council? Okay.
so hopefully we'll jump another, 9 percentage points, but this time it's because we actually did something.
Yes. Okay, on that positive note. This is a review of village-owned lots. This was something I asked to be placed on the agenda to satisfy my curiosity, and Doug and his team went ahead and found more information than I even thought would be possible, but I'm very impressed because we now have a real inventory, if we had to get to it, of what is out there property-wise. What does the village own? How much is it worth? I was really looking for the vacant lots, but Doug and his team did more thorough, and they got every bit of village property we own, what's its value, and how many pieces are there. So Doug, you want to give us the highlights, or?
Well, I had just the map up, and you can see that a lot of it's focused around here. We have a lot of property in this general location, but we do have quite a few vacant lots that presumably some of them were donated to us. The village about, 15, 20 years ago had a program where you could donate your lot, and there was tax advantages to doing that. So we have 74 that the village owns, valued at $43 million. If you look on here, you can see which ones have a building value. All the other ones would be vacant. Sometimes you might get a question, but really this is just an FYI. So if there are any questions, I'm happy.
Yeah, I'm going to just pick on some that sort of confused me here. I'm looking at the line, I can't tell, but it looks like 46. The total value is at 246. Obviously, there's a building value of 0, so there's no building there. Where is that? That's a $246,000 lot, I guess.
So this says it's Carolina Vista Cherokee. I'm guessing this is Marshall Park.
That's Marshall Park.
So it's Marshall Park. Okay, well, that's good to know.
Sell it.
No. I mean, that's good to know. It's a park. It's a public purpose.
So the vast majority have no building on them and are valued under $80,000. A lot. I sorted the Excel spreadsheet a couple different ways. There's a pile of them that are apparently empty lots that are in the $55,000 range. That must be the standard Moore County valuation for an empty lot in an R10, for example.
Yep.
That's likely. I mean, there must be 30 or 40 of them like that.
So does that mean those are literally 30 or 40 lots we could sell, or are we going to do, we have a plan for them, or what are you thinking?
There's not necessarily a plan for them. We'd have to dive into each one of them individually. Some of them may be for like stormwater or something else. But I'm sure that there are some that could be sold off. And actually, earlier on the agenda, we had one of them that the neighbor wants to buy because he wants to expand his house. We're like, that's probably something that we're totally fine with. We just couldn't find an auctioneer to work out the details. So that'll come before your next meeting.
Yeah, there was, as you mentioned, there was it wasn't an active program. We didn't solicit actively, but however, a lot of people donated lots.
Yeah.
And it usually was the lots that were membership lots. That's the way Diamond Head called them, membership lots. The likelihood of being able to build on them was close to zero. You just bought them, so it got you membership into the Pinehurst Country Club. And then someone realized, whoops, maybe this isn't such a good idea, I don't want to be a member. And they decided to get a tax advantage. In those days, you could donate it to a municipality and get the tax write-off because the standard deduction was so wasn't as high as it is now. So there was a lot of that donation. Some of the donations, I would say the vast majority of donations did not have any criteria with them. In other words, it didn't say you must maintain this as an open lot, you must do something or another with it. It was just a donation period. So there's no restriction as to what we can do, including selling it, obviously.
Well, let me ask I guess the obvious question. If some of these vacant lots we own come with the membership, they may be valuable out on the open market.
I think they may have lost the membership.
Oh, okay.
I mean,
I thought that stays for a long time.
There's a lot in Pinewild that the village owns, on Stony Kirk, I think it is, and it's not very buildable, let me put it that way. And I don't think actually the village pays the HOA fees, believe it or not, every year.
Boy, you have to say
But
that
there's
in an open
that
meeting.
lot, I know what happened there. The person actually decided that it wasn't worth building because it was almost unbuildable and decided to donate it to the village and claimed $70,000 or $80,000 in tax. So it happens all over the place.
Is there any maintenance cost for carrying these?
No, we don't. Yeah, we don't maintain, other than the actual parks.
Okay,
the
when
big
I
parks
say
we don't
maintenance,
do.
let's just say, is there any expenditures we have to do other than just having one on a spreadsheet?
No.
We're not paying taxes to the county on it. 'cause
No, we're
we own
not.
it.
There-
And so,
It's a
okay.
good question because there were a few lots that I know, as a matter of fact, that were donated hoping that the village would maintain them in some reasonable fashion. In other words, keep the undergrowth down and so forth and so on. And they donated them so that they didn't have to maintain them, they could get the tax write-off, and they would be empty lots next to their house because that increased the value of their house. So there's all kinds of reasons that we ended up with the lots.
But we're not mowing lawns and things like that, other than in the parks.
Actual parks, yeah.
Doug, do you have any thoughts, the next steps? I mean,
I mean, we can certainly sell them off as interest is shown by anyone, abutters or whatever. We could actively try to find buyers for these. Again, there's an opportunity cost, like,
Right.
that's a lot of work for how much value, but
Who would be who wants to buy these lots if they're unbuildable?
it would typically be in a butter. So, for instance, the one that we're going to be considering soon, he wants to expand his lot, needs more impervious area, or pervious area, and so that works for him.
Well, why don't you give it some thought about what we can do? I mean, to me, if they're empty, they have no value to us, and somebody might want them, might as well get it on the tax rolls, as opposed to it just sitting there. Maybe there's a purpose to a dog park. Like, that's an opportunity cost issue. Maybe, I just don't know, but it's good to know what we have.
There may be one or two lots that serve as access for pathways, gateways, or walkways.
Yeah.
So we ought to carefully consider that.
For instance, the pathway that you approved, a couple of meetings ago for Adams Circle to the Greenway is built on one of these lots.
There you go.
Yeah.
That's good to know.
But yes, I will go through, kind of put some thought into, how can we best identify which ones are completely surplus and then maybe think of some ways we could easily surplus them and not spend a lot of effort on that.
Come up with a top 10 maybe as a start.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, again, I appreciate the work that went into this and, you know, solved a few mysteries and maybe there's something we can do with this that'll put things on the tax rolls or do something to the benefit of our residents who, you know, wondered why can't we have another park or another dog park or something. I don't know.
As an aside, there was a thought to create little community parks here and there and to use these donated properties as the basis for developing smaller parks, but I'm not sure that has,
Yeah, personally, I like that idea, but it also comes with operational costs in the future.
All righty. I think we've discussed enough on that. Is there any item other than a motion to adjourn?
I move to adjourn the work session.
That's what I was looking for.
Second.
We have a motion to second. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Good night, Irene. All right, that's it.